John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics with prophetic precision. And now J-Fred's picking sports. Are y'all ready for this? All across the airwaves and streams of the John Fredericks Media Network, John, Jack, and Nate, three guys that are pretty wise when it comes to picking winners. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, golf, UFC battles, you name it. When the game is on your mind and money's on the line, Godzilla Wins is your guide to picking winners. Before you make that play, hear what J-Fred has to say. Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
Oh yeah, for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the Godzilla Wins Saturday Picks Show on this Wednesday night, March 15th, 2023. We're bringing you a midweek episode on the first round of March Madness because we just can't wait until Saturday to talk about our brackets. I'm your host, Jack Fredericks, editor of Godzilla Wins, where you can get all of your sports picks and predictions on everything from the NBA to the UFC. And I'm here with my Godzilla Wins regular contributors, Nate Perry and Sheriff David Clarke. Welcome, everyone, to this special edition of the Godzilla Wins Pick Show.
Thank you.
Excited to be here.
We're all excited. This is Wednesday night, right before the games start on Thursday. If you're like me, you've been grinding on some NIT basketball. So has my dad, who's not here, but has been sending in his NIT picks lately. So I guess he can't wait to get this started either. He's got one up on the site right now. You go to GodzillaWins.com. Yeah, no days off seriously, for him, when it comes to this stuff, there really is no days off. It'd be nice if he actually took a day off, I think. When he's in North Carolina, I think he has to. But you go to GodzillaWins.com, you can go to his column, You Can't Buy Culture, and he's got a nice analysis on Youngstown State versus Oklahoma State. That's his pick today. So you can go there and find that. So very excited to have everyone with us. The first thing we want to talk about, what we're going to do today for the show, the special episode, is we're going to just talk about some storylines for round one. We'll talk about the Blue Bloods. We'll talk about some contenders or pretenders, the Cinderellas we like, stuff like that. But we want to start with a little Duke content because our resident Dukeaholic, Sheriff Clarke, is here with us. And Sheriff, earlier in the week in a text thread with us three and my dad, you mentioned this Duke bias that you feel like the tournament often is a little biased when it comes to where they select Duke, where they put them for Selection Sunday. So what can you tell us about this Duke bias here?
Well, first of all, Jack, I think you're being too humble. We sat through the season here and we zoned in on a couple of teams. By the way, it's not Dukeaholics, it's Dukies, they call us. But anyway,
okay.
I had to sit here every week and hear about Rutgers. I sat through the tournament selection show. Rutgers' name didn't appear. And then for the next 24 hours, all I heard was whining from not just Rutgers fans, people all over the country. That wasn't fair. Rutgers should have got in. Then I heard they got a #1 seed for the NIT. How's that working out?
So they lost. They didn't come through like I thought they would in that first game in the NIT. And I'll tell you, as a guy, I got my old Miss shirt on right now. That's where I went to school. Another team that just has a paltry basketball program. But I've been following Rutgers forever. I don't know why. My dad's from Jersey, I guess. And in 2006, they were in the NIT and they went to the championship game. And I was just so locked in. I was like, I watched that whole game and they lost and I was just crushed. And now we're back in the NIT and bounced out in the first round. Pretty embarrassing there. So
my house of all people. And I just got to rib you about that because, I follow college basketball and I'm with the Blue Bloods, but at the same time, I never did I ever think that I'd be hearing somebody break down Rutgers men's basketball. So I had to keep giving you a hard time about it. Anyway, back to the Blue Devils and this anti-Duke bias. It does exist within the tournament committee. And it's not just this year. I'm one of those guys that I don't make too big a deal about the seeding because no matter where you're seated, you got to win 6 games, 7 if you're a play-in team. But And whoever you're up against, that's who you have to beat. But what I've noticed over the years, this isn't a one-time thing. Duke, no matter how good they are, last year they were a number one seed. I think a couple of years ago they were the number one seed in the entire tournament. And then they get sent out to the West Regional, for heaven's sakes, all the way across the country, having to play games in Denver, Colorado, or in Provo, Utah, as a number one seed from the East. I think that the number one seed from the East should stay in the East, for heaven's sakes. Anyway, this year they get a number 5 seed. I would have been happy with that in December when they were almost a bubble team to make the tournament. I would have thought, you know what, 5, oh my God, I'll take that and I'll run with it. I predicted before the ACC tournament, I was hearing about a 7 seed. I thought, yeah, that might be about right the way the season's gone. But then they went on a tear. 9-game winning streak. They won the ACC. They beat Virginia in the finals. Virginia got a 4 seed. Duke gets a 5. They beat Miami in the ACC tournament. Miami gets a 5. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. How could all these teams be bunched together like that? I would have thought a 3 would have been fair, but 3 to 5, I'm not going to argue, except for the opponent. Last year, in the second round, when they won the first game, they're up against Michigan State, who was tough last year, not so much this year. But I'm like, in the second game, a number 1 seed, Duke, or it might have been a number 2 last year, second game. But I've noticed in years past, like I said, even if they get a number 1 seed, they send them, out west with a time zone change and everything else and the travel. And then they always load up the damn bracket. When Duke's a number 1, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all strong teams who are underseeded, for heaven's sake. And you know what? I'm not the only one that thinks this. It's brought up on some of the shows about who's got the toughest path as the number 1 to the finals or the Final Four. And oftentimes these talking heads will say Duke, and it's true. And that's why I come up with this anti-Duke bias. But you know what? Us Duke fans, we put up with a lot. We know what we're up against. We're not just up against an opponent, but we're up against the NCAA. We're up against the NCAA selection committee, and we're up against all the Duke haters. But I get a lot of practice with that from being a Dallas Cowboy fan to get treated the same way.
Long-suffering Duke fans. And
what a world.
Yes, man, I had no idea you guys had it so
yeah,
tough.
I sound
so
like
hard making Final Fours.
I sound like a whiner, but you know what? I can't let this go.
Nate, what do you think about the Duke bias? You think the 5 seed is appropriate?
I mean, I think that it's appropriate based on if you're just measuring legacy and history, then yeah, they seem underseeded, right? If you're just sort of factoring in, name, cachet, all that stuff. I mean, keep in mind that UNC got snubbed from the tournament too, which is huge. From my perspective, like the thing about the ACC is they're just not a very good basketball conference this year. And that's really what hurts them, is that like Duke is the best in the ACC, but like at the advanced metrics that I look at, like KenPom.com or something that sort of factors in, all these adjustments and sort of advanced metrics, they're like the 21st best team in the country. Virginia, who's second best in the ACC, is like the 34th best team in the country. So the advanced stats just aren't very friendly to the ACC teams, and they aren't very friendly to Duke. That being said, I mean, Duke is sneaky because they're like, I saw some gaudy stat, like they're 17-1 when everyone's healthy on the team. They're on that 9-game win streak. I mean, they rolled through the ACC tournament. So, I mean, 5 feels fair just based on metrics, but this is a team that's clearly on the rise too. I mean, I don't know if you hate it, them being a 5 seed, if, they can get through this, Oral Roberts isn't exactly the toughest challenge. And then playing Tennessee and Louisiana isn't exactly like, hard work either, as far as tournament, like sort of sub-regions go.
I would agree with you, Nate, that this year the ACC is not as strong as in the past. However, I think you're shortchanging Virginia and Miami. They spent a lot of time in the top 10. Duke is number 12 right now, but they jumped 10 spots. Mm-hmm. They were 22 last week, and then all of a sudden, I guess people are taking note. But I got a problem too with who they play in their at least the first round. I did last year too, and then they had to, in the second game, had to play Michigan State. But Oral Roberts, now of course they play in a week, the Summit. I don't even know who else is in the Summit Conference. I'll be honest with you, I never heard of the Summit. Heard of Oral Roberts University, but never the Summit Conference. They went 18-0, but I don't know who they played. I think they're 30-5 or 31-4, something like that. Mm-hmm. And I understand that their 4 losses were all to quad 1 teams, which means when they play decent competition, they don't stack up. But they're kind of like a mid-major. They're not one of the top teams in the country, but they are solid. And here's the other thing about Oral Roberts that scares me. I'm afraid of this game for Duke, and the reason is, I took note this morning. Their top 4 players: junior, senior, senior, senior. Experience, have played together. That matters in these tournaments. Duke's starting, or Duke 4, their top 5: junior, freshman, freshman, freshman. Now, these freshmen are well beyond their years. They played obviously in a lot of AAU games, a lot of tough competition with against tough other basketball players all across the country. They were in high school tournaments last year, for heaven's sakes, but they were the go-to guy. Their teams counted on them in the high school tournament, and most of these guys led their team to the state championship. That was what Duke struggled with early in the season. These were the go-to guys. And so they get to Duke, and they all thinking, hey, I'm a 5-star, McDonald's All-American. I'm the go-to guy. And they had a hard time sharing the ball because they were always counted on in high school. Here, get him the ball and get out of the way. And so they just felt that way. They didn't feel that their teammates were inferior, but it was that mindset. Finally, John Shire, the coach, got them to understand how to share the basketball and count on your teammates. In high school, they didn't count on their teammates. It's get me the ball and get out of the way. But I just think that Oral Roberts with senior, junior for their top 5 have played together. They know each other. They're experienced. And I think that matters at times like this. You know, who knows, you get in a tough situation. This is a back and forth game. Will that experience come through? I'm a little worried. I know Duke is a 6-point favorite. Don't take the cheese on that. Yeah, maybe they win by 13, 14, but I wouldn't take those points. But this game here, I'm worried about this one.
Yeah,
Oral
I mean,
Roberts...
I think.
Go ahead.
I guess just like to like sort of like finish up this like conversation about like homerism and stuff, because I think about this all the time. It's like, and I think about this with, you know, teams I like constantly throughout all this bracket stuff for years. You know, for years I always felt like Bob Huggins, like at West Virginia, always got hosed by the bracketologist, and then it occurs to me that I think that everyone just thinks they got hosed. I don't think that anyone, if they're really invested in a team, looks at their opponent in the NCAA tournament and thinks walkover. You know, these are all good teams. You know what I mean? Like, these are all solid teams. So I think there's a little bit of us, you know, being homers, is being like, oh, why couldn't we just got a pushover? But I'm not sure there are many pushovers in this field, unless you're number 1 seed playing to 16. And even then, sometimes we've seen that even 1 seeds can fall now, you know?
Well, but it's only happened once. And it's kind of like even the blind squirrel will find an acorn once in a while, that finally a number one team fell to a number 16 team. We might go the next 30 years without that happening. Who knows? You're right, Nate. You know, everybody thinks they're getting hosed. There's no doubt about it, which is why I said, hey, you know, if you'd have told me a 5 seed in December, I'd have said, I'll take it. Now we're getting into March, and I'm like, we're getting screwed. I think where you play matters more than who you play, meaning how far do you have to travel? Can your fans get there? And, you know, you're playing on a neutral site. You're playing a team you probably haven't played before, at least not this year. So there's no familiarity, unlike the conference tournaments. Heck, those teams played probably twice against each other all during the season, and they know each other. Whereas when it gets to tourney time, you can watch all the film you want. But when you haven't played against, a person's strength, and it's one of your weaknesses, that's where sometimes, and we'll get into this, I guess, a little bit in the brackets, where this thing can fall apart on you, get away from you.
Yeah.
What are the other things to keep in mind with the bracketology stuff and Duke getting that 5 seed? I mean, yeah, they're on a 9-game win streak, but I think, if Coach K is at the helm, they're probably a 3 seed at the
100%.
2 or 3. Rookie coach, young team, a team that, like you said, in January, December, you would have been really excited to be a 5 seed, but they ripped off a ton of wins. Now, as far as Oral Roberts goes, I mean, the Summit League is not exactly the ACC, but I have been around teams that go undefeated, or in Oral Roberts' case, yeah, I mean, they're like 18-0, 17-game win streak, something like that. So 18-0 in the conference. So they think they're extremely good. They have a lot of confidence. They expect to win every game. They don't care who they play. That's dangerous. I think, Nate, you're being a little dismissive of Oral Roberts. I actually think this is a pretty dangerous 5-12 spot for Duke.
Oh,
and
I'm not saying I'm not being dismissive of Oral Roberts. I think Oral Roberts is a great team, and they have a stud that can lead them all the way. And you see what happens when there's just one guy that can take over a game for these mid majors. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying there's no locks. Like when you look at this, there's arguments to be made everywhere.
And my thing with Duke is if they were limping into the tournament, then maybe they lose to Oral Roberts. But this is a lot like golf. You have to be peaking at the right time. Duke is about as hot as any team in the country. So I expect them to rip off a couple. I think the Sweet 16 is pretty much a lock for them, but we'll see. And Sheriff Clarke should be nervous, because if I think something's going to happen in college basketball, probably the opposite will happen. So
no, but the committee talks about that, afterwards when they come out about why was this team seated here and how come this team didn't get in. And they talk about one of the elements. There's several elements, and they mention that, but one of them is how well did you play down the stretch? All right. And then you mentioned Coach K, they probably get a 3. This year, I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of respect. There wasn't an anti-Coach K within the committee. I just think it was the brand, the institution of Duke University basketball where there's the bias. But here's another thing too. John Shire went undefeated at home this year. Coach K never did that. John Shire won the ACC conference tournament. Duke didn't do that last year with a better team, or the year before when they had the big 3 with Zion Williamson. Didn't win the ACC. I think they won the regular season conference, but not the ACC tournament. So although Shire is new and whatnot, he still has that brand along with him. And I know all teams can talk up why they should have been higher and why they should have made the tournament over somebody else. And that's not what I'm trying to get into here. I want to make it clear there is this anti-Duke bias, and nobody's ever going to talk me out of it.
Nor should they. And look, this is a great tournament for you too, because the Tar Heels missed it, and then they were so upset that they missed it that they refused to participate. Yeah, which
that's not a good look. That's not a good look. And obviously, I'm a Duke fan. I don't like UNC, but that's not a good look, because basically what you're saying is we're above this, when actually it might have done Hubert Davis's team good to eat some humble pie and go to the NIT, do what they can there, show some class. That arrogance, that they didn't go. And I heard there was an excuse. I didn't hear what it was, but they released one today. I'm just not buying it. They took their toys and they picked up their toys and they went home, picked up their ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen teams that are like Syracuse, very storied basketball programs, who have a down year, miss the tournament, and then accept the invitation to the NIT and compete just like they would anywhere else. So not a great look. So let's get to a couple more blue bloods here. We spent a lot of time on Duke. That's fine, because we have resident Duke fans.
Well,
here.
there's Duke, and then there's everybody else, right,
That's
Nate?
right. Yeah. So let's get to a couple other, we'll call them blue bloods. These are seeds 1 through 4 that we think have an opportunity to go to the Final Four. Nate, let's start with you. What are 1 or 2 blue bloods who you really like here that could get to the Final Four, you think?
So my big one that I really like, and this is a team that I've been following basically for at least like really closely the last couple of months because they looked like a team on the rise to me, is I'm going to go a little bit deeper down. I'm going to skip all the 1 seeds, all the 2 seeds, all the 3 seeds, and go straight to the 4s. I love UConn, and I love their section of the bracket. I mean, so for all of our crying about how, teams get hosed or whatever, and teams that I like getting hosed, UConn got a pretty favorable draw here, pulling Iona in the first round. Then they play the winner of St. Mary's VCU. It's a very gettable path to the Sweet 16, and UConn's like a real team. They have size, depth. They rebound it well. They protect the rim, and the advanced metrics, which is like what I follow, and what John loves to give me a hard time about. Really like this team as well. They stack up, they measure up well. Ken Pomeroy has them rated as the 4th best team in the country. They're elite offensively. They're really strong defensively. And they played a pretty tough strength of schedule. So UConn's sort of the first team that I look at, and I think like this is a draw that works for them. They're, an athletic team. They can spread it around. They have strong players. I think they're a tough matchup for almost anyone they get thrown in against. And I think that there's a very gettable path to at least, the Elite 8. I think there's a real doable path for them to go the whole way out of that division in the West. So that's the first one.
Go ahead.
No, that's the sort of just first one that I sort of.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand this infatuation with the Big East this year.
I knew you were going to jump all over that.
Oh, yeah.
You hate the Big East.
A couple of weeks ago, I made the comment. I said, "Hey, it's not like Lou Carnesecca at St. John's is storming the sidelines. It's not like John Thompson at Georgetown. It's not like Al McGuire at Marquette or Jim Calhoun at UConn. Those guys aren't storming the sideline. I still think the Big East is extremely overrated. Some solid teams. But I watched UConn jump out of the gate fast. But they win like the first 14 games or something like that. They were number 1 in the country. And then they came back down to earth. I thought twice in the last month they had a shot at Marquette and lost twice. And the games weren't even close, for heaven's sake. So I don't know. And I'm hearing a lot of teams. I'm hearing a lot of people. When I say a lot of people, let me qualify that. Listening to the sports talk shows, the hosts, that like UConn, and I'm not saying they're not a nice club. I think Marquette will go farther than UConn in this tournament, and I think Marquette is over. A solid club, but I still think that they're overrated. So a couple of games I looked at, I circled here. You mentioned the 1 through 4 seeds. Some of them, the UConn game was the one I have circled here. Iona's no slouch.
No, they're not. They're pretty good.
The reason why coaching, Rick Pitino goes to Iona of all schools and builds a freaking program in a couple of years. If this game comes down to coaching at the end, there could be an upset right there. Iona defeating UConn. I'm not picking it. I'm saying that's a game there I got circled on my sheet here. The other one, people are thinking that Furman is going to beat Virginia.
Yes.
And I'm like, listen to that. I didn't even hardly finish the sentence.
This is just incredible radio because I love the Big East and I hate the ACC. So we can just go all day.
Okay. There's no way that's going to happen. The other thing is the game I think is really interesting. Matter of fact, I made a side bet with it with a friend of mine. Kentucky and Providence. Okay. You talk about blue bloods. I think Kentucky has it figured out. I would look for them to, again, Providence, okay, but a Big East team again. We're going to find out how good the Big East is because they got some pretty interesting matchups in round 1. A couple of teams I think that people shouldn't sleep on. I'm picking Gonzaga to go far. Let's not, I don't want to get into who's going to win it all. That's too hard to say, but Gonzaga has no pressure. this year, solid club again. A team with players who have stayed in school and so they played together. UCLA is they lost their shooting guard Clarke, but I don't know. There's another team that has some senior experience on it. Look for them. Alabama, yeah, that's an easy one. Kansas, yeah, that's an easy one. Houston, I'm not so sure of. There's another one. Houston, not a tough conference. Don't have a lot of solid club. When I slam the conference, doesn't mean these teams aren't good, but when you're not playing, every time you turn around, you're playing in your conference, and it's a tough game. When you're not doing that week in and week out, I just wonder, how good are you?
Sure. I mean, I guess to sort of round this out, then the one team that I think, outside of just sort of my teams that I've adopted throughout the season in the Big East, the team that nobody really seems to be talking about that looks like as hot as anybody in the country is Arizona. And I don't know why nobody is saying like
Good
Arizona can run through this bracket. I just don't get it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That their play down low is unbelievable. They play pretty good defense. And they have been they just dominated the Pac-12 tournament. So I mean, if I'm looking at teams that are, hot right now, that are high up there and nobody seems to be mentioning, like, what's wrong with Arizona? I don't see any huge flaws there.
Did Arizona suffer an injury?
Not as far. I think there's maybe a groin injury to the point guard that he's questionable for right now.
Yeah, health matters in these in these tournaments. I think where you make your money, and I think it's a coin toss. You're 7 through 10s, 7 versus 10 and 8, 9. Those are the hardest. I think they're a coin flip. It's kind of a take either one. You can't go wrong. You have to, if you're going to do well in this tournament. I mean, in terms of your brackets, in terms of betting, you gotta hit your 7s and 10s and your 8s and 9s, a lot of them, because some of these are no brainers. Your 1s and 16s, even your 2s and 15s, even your 3 and 14. There'll be some upsets, but you know what? If a 14 beats a 3, guess what? Most people had the 3 anyway, so it's not really going to put you out on anything.
Sure.
But you've got to do well, 75, 80, 90% in the 7 through 10s if you're going to do well if you're in a bracket play.
Yeah. So Arizona is in the South. They play in Sacramento. They play Princeton for the first 2 rounds. They really don't have a difficult road to the Sweet 16 or possibly even the Elite 8. I mean, we're talking, they got Creighton, Baylor's the 3 seed in that bracket. If they beat Princeton, they got Missouri and Utah State. They're plus 700 to get to the Final Four. UConn is plus 900. That's one of the reasons I think Nate likes them. Good odds there. Kentucky, which Sheriff Clarke mentioned, they're 20-1 to make the Final Four. I think Kentucky has a real nice shot. They've been playing better basketball, and that's a veteran team. So you talk about Duke being a younger team. Kentucky this year, much more experienced than usual. I think that they have definitely a shot, especially at 20-1 for the Final Four. Seems kind of nice there. So it looks like we covered a lot of the blue bloods here. Not a lot of love for the 1 seeds. I don't know. Alabama, you just never know.
Yeah.
The 1 seeds are so boring because, you could pick Kansas to go all the way. Every year.
It's just like, oh, how exciting. Yeah. Like Bill Self, another deep run in the tournament. Like, cool. Like, that's not,
right. So I don't know. It's just not much fun when you're filling out your bracket. But those guys are 1 seeds for a reason. So before we get to our contenders or pretenders, or contenders or pretenders. I made up the segment. I can't think of the name. Before we get to that, I want to thank one of our sponsors here that helps make this show possible, targettrading.co. That's targettrading.co. With all the fear out there about the economy and personal finances, many people are turning to trading the markets to help support themselves and their families. Trading is risky. There is no doubt. Trading is not something that should be entered lightly. And that is all the more reason to get the proper training and education. Target Trading Academy is the #1 futures trading education company in the industry. Over the last 15 years, the team has developed successful, respectable, repeatable trading strategies, and Target Trading Academy delivers these trading methods to you in a highly structured and effective learning environment. Do you want proof? Of course you do. Check out the student reviews on Trustpilot and online. You're going to find 5-star reviews across the board. That's why you got to see why Chris says Target Trading Academy is a step to a better financial freedom and quality of life. Whatever the reason you may want to learn and do futures trading, you will not be disappointed by choosing this academy. But don't listen to the reviews only. Find out for yourself. Go to www.targettradingacademy.com to sign up for a free virtual campus tour. You can see Patrick and Co. in action and find out firsthand why they are #1 trading education company in the game. Target Trading Academy. Go to targettrading.co. That's targettrading.co, or call 888-203-3731. That's 888-203-3731. We always want to thank Patrick at Target Trading for partnering with us and making this show possible. Okay, let's look at some contenders or pretenders. So what I imagine here, and we can kind of expand it out if you want to, I was thinking maybe seeds 5 through 10, maybe even, you could even throw like 11 in there as some teams that you think, okay, these are some guys that might be contenders, or here's a team that's going to get bounced early, upset alert type of deal. Nate, let's start with one of your contenders or pretenders, then we'll go to Sheriff Clarke.
I mean, my favorite contender is Creighton. Again, going right back to the Big East. It's just a team that I love. They just are so beautiful offensively that I just can't get over it. And the defense for a long time was sort of a liability. And they lost some games kind of December, January. But since then, they've really sort of gelled and they look really good. They don't force a lot of turnovers, but the offense is incredible and they're solid enough defensively, I think, to go on a big run, particularly out of this bracket. That I think Baylor's overrated. I think there's a good chance Creighton plays UC Santa Barbara in, for a matchup to go to the Sweet 16. And then, and then the tough matches against Arizona. But I think that there's a clear path here, to at least the Elite Eight or Final Four for Creighton. Especially if they really get humming offensively. They're a team that I love, and I don't think they're getting enough credit because of people like Sheriff Clarke that think maybe the Big East is a little bit overrated. But I'm not one of those people. But I will eat crow on Saturday when everyone in the Big East loses in the first round.
they're Creighton's 20-1 to make the Final Four, so I wouldn't exactly say that's pretty short odds for a 6 seed. Kentucky's 20-1 as well. Indiana's 25-1. So I think a lot of people are with you.
I'm holding my 50-1 ticket on them to go all the way.
There you go.
Yeah,
there it is. There he is.
There it is. There it is.
Okay, yeah. Now we know why you like Creighton. What you need is you need Creighton. You don't like them.
What I need is help. What I also need is Creighton.
Sheriff Clarke, do you have a contender or pretender?
Let me comment a little bit on Nate's.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Analysis there. The Creighton, North Carolina State. We're going to find out early about the two conferences. I'm impressed with North Carolina State. I don't think they're a great team. Those guys play hard. They are athletic. And I know in a game, I think it was back in December, they blew Duke out by like 30 points. Duke suffered, I think, one of their worst ACC losses ever. So I don't know. I'm looking at Virginia Furman. We talked about that. I won't get into that one. Here's one. Miami and Drake. A lot of people are putting their money on Drake for some reason or another. Again, ACC team. And, again, we're going to find out. I think it'll be a good matchup. And then the St. Mary's, it's a 5-12. And VCU, Virginia Commonwealth. A lot of people are high on VCU. I don't know why. St. Mary's, some of these teams out west, I'm not that impressed with. Utah State, I'm not that impressed with, although a lot of people are high on Utah State. So I think there's a lot of, what do they like to call it, parity in your 7 to 10s and even your 5s and 12s. But here's one here, Boise State, Northwestern. And how the heck did Texas A&M ended up as a number 7 seed, for heaven's sakes. I thought Texas A&M had a pretty solid year. I'm a Buzz Williams fan. I think, yeah, Buzz Williams was at Texas A&M. I'm a Buzz Williams fan. I saw them play well down the stretch. Texas, I'm real high. The fact that Texas was able to kind of easily win the Big 12. I mean, they walked all over Kansas. You don't see that. Kansas, when they lose, it's usually close. That game was over right after halftime. And I was blown away by that. Although Texas is a solid team, they've overcome a lot. They lost their coach. But they're playing well for that new coach. I don't know his name. You know, they named him the interim coach and then they removed the interim title. Texas, especially in the bracket they're in, with Houston at number 1, the number 1 seed. Texas is number 2. You have Indiana number 4. I'm not big on the Big Ten. I'm just not. They'll probably win their first game. And then you have Xavier, again, the Big East. I don't know. I'm not buying the Big East.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Nate, you could be wrong on the ACC. I could be wrong on the Big East, but I got to see it now. I got to see it.
And Texas path looks totally gettable. I mean, it's not like a murderer's row of people that scare you with, you know, in that sort of sub-region there, you know, to get to the Elite Eight that Texas would have to play. I mean, Colgate, they should walk over. A&M, Penn State, meh. But then, like, you know, Iowa State, Pittsburgh, Xavier, Kennesaw State, I'm not sure there's any team that just makes Texas just totally scared until they get to maybe, you know, an Elite Eight matchup against Houston or, you know, if Miami or Indiana get red hot and healthy. Yeah, so I think that's fair.
I think Miami scares me in that part of the bracket in the Midwest. I have Miami going all the way in a couple brackets because I think if they get real hot, they can pretty much beat anybody.
Your weird homerism for Miami is unfounded.
Yeah, it is. So my sister lives in South Florida. So there's that. I've been to South Florida a lot. And when I was younger, Miami's a really good school. And so I was just in awe of anyone who went there. Because it was either Ole Miss or the Marines for me. There was no opportunity to go to Miami. So part of that is some, but I don't know. I like them. I do like Texas too. They play with a ton of energy at home. It's like electric. It's a lot of fun to watch, but I think that Texas A&M in the second round could pose a problem for them if Texas A&M can advance because they're real hot right now. You're talking about teams peaking at the right time. They played really well in that SEC tournament. So I don't know. We'll see. Do we have any pretenders? Anyone in this kind of like 5 to 10 range, or even maybe in the 1 to 4 range you think might really bounce? I mean, Nate, I know you mentioned Tennessee. You might not like them. Anyone you don't like?
I mean, I don't like Miami that much. And I think that I don't like Miami just because I'm not sure they're healthy. They have a few injuries and it just seems unclear like who's going to be playing for them. So they're a hard team for me to be like, oh yeah, contender when they have at least 2 injuries that I can see right now. And then, you know, with sort of question marks on them and potential limitations against a Drake team that's like real and has like a player who can like, you know, actually get things done. DeVries is a real player for Drake. So you get like the one stud against a kind of banged up Miami team. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to be out, you know, in the first round. So they're a team that I think might be a pretender and not a contender.
I look at Indiana as a pretender. They're a 4 seed in the Midwest. I look at Xavier as the number 3 seed in the Midwest as a pretender. I look at, I mentioned Gonzaga, UCLA as contenders. And then I'm looking over here in the South. Contender, Arizona. Baylor, I think pretender.
Yes, agree with Baylor.
Yeah, so nothing really glaring. I don't. The number 1 seeds, other than Purdue, I even Purdue a little bit. I think the number 1 seeds are all contenders. I don't think 4 number 1 seeds are getting to the Final Four. I don't think 3 number 1 seeds are getting to the Final Four, but I think at least 2 of them. And so out of those 4, I think you'll get 2 of them that end up at least in the Elite 8.
I can't stand Purdue. I think they're a pretender. I've been trying to fade them all year, and all they do is win. So maybe I'm just mad at them for ruining some of my tickets there. But I've broken this down before. I don't think that they adjust very well when you double team Zach Edey. I don't think they have any perimeter shooters. And, a number 1 seed is going to need more than one player. And Zach Edey's pretty raw. I mean, he just going into the NBA. When he goes in the NBA, it's going to be a learning curve. Now he's big and he's strong. It's not like Chet Holmgren last year where he's kind of like a piece of paper. Zach Edey's huge, but he's raw and he doesn't see the court the way you want a big man to. And I think Purdue is a team that if you're able to game plan around Edey and neutralize him, I think that they're going to really struggle. But I don't know. I mean, the Big Ten they've been really good this year. So that's a conference that a lot of people are high on. I suppose we'll see here.
Do they call 3 seconds in college basketball anymore, for heaven's sakes? I watched that Big Ten final of Penn State and Purdue. And Zach Edey, he plants in the damn lane, for heaven's sakes. And I was watching him specifically because I noticed that, and I was counting myself. 1001, 1002, 1003. Then he steps 1 foot out and then he's back into the lane. He just kind of plods along. He hits free throws. He snags rebounds. There's no doubt about that. But I sat up there and watched Penn State erase a 17-point lead with like 4 minutes to go in the game. Penn State came out with a ferocious press in the last 4 minutes and cut down a 17-point lead to 1. And then they had a couple of missteps at the end. Look, if you're a dominant team, you can't lose a 17-point lead in the last 3 or 4 minutes and call yourself elite. It can't happen.
People were high on Purdue last year and they got bounced pretty early in that tournament. I know I had them going very far. I don't feel like I just don't think that this sort of post-heavy style of basketball is something that works in college basketball anymore. I don't really see that as, if you don't have a perimeter shooter, at least 1 or 2 guys on the perimeter who can move the ball and create space and draw you away from someone like Edey, then all you got to do is focus on the one guy. Yeah, he's going to get his rebounds, but I just think it's fairly easy to neutralize him, but we'll see.
If it comes down to coaching, Purdue's going to be in trouble. I don't mean in the early rounds. I'm talking about, you start getting to the Elite 8, you start getting into a game where it's in the last couple of minutes and it's tight. Painter's not a real good game coach. I mean, I'm sitting up there watching this past Sunday, when they were losing that 17-point lead, and I'm yelling at the TV, and I'm not a Purdue fan, but I said, do something, stop the bleeding, for heaven's sakes. And he couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. He never seems to make the right adjustments. He does make adjustments. I'm not a college basketball coach, so I hate sitting here saying, well, they're not making adjustments. They're always making adjustments. They're always subbing people in and stuff like that. But at times, I just don't think that he adjusts quick enough, or maybe he's just not that worried because he always wins. I mean, who knows? Could be they're just a team that kind of sticks with their game plan, figure Edey's going to get his points, and in the end, going to end up on top. But we'll see. I'm definitely not very high on Purdue. We are going to talk about some Cinderellas we're high on in just a minute, but we need to thank another one of our sponsors here, Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Today's show is brought to you by Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Rosie's has paid out over $475 million in jackpots so far this year. February winners include Alex. That's our man, Big Al. Big Al won $140 grand at Rosie's in Dumfries in Virginia. Tabitha won $99,000 in Rosie's in Richmond. That's a huge number for old Tabitha. Douglas won $93 grand in Dumfries, and Robert won $46 grand in Rosie's in Vinton. Some major jackpot winners there. I'd love to get up there and win a jackpot myself. Starting in March, new members play for free at Rosie's. Sign up for a free Rosie's rewards card and instantly receive anywhere from $25 to $1,000 in free play for your first visit. Learn more about this promotion. Go to Rosie's Rewards and Jackpots at rosiesgaming.com. Don't forget, horse racing starts July 13th at Colonial Downs in New Kent, Virginia. That's a Rosie's Gaming Emporium track there. My father, John Fredericks, the Godzilla of Truth, will be there probably the entire time that they are racing horses. He loves the horses. So we want to thank Rosie's for partnering with us. Okay, let's get to our Cinderellas here. These are teams in the lower seeds. We've talked about a couple teams, teams like Drake, Furman, that have not just a chance to upset in the first round, but you could kind of see moving into maybe the Sweet 16, possibly maybe even maybe the Elite Eight, stringing together a couple wins. I'll open it up. Either one of you want to start with one of these Cinderellas you might love?
I mean, I think Drake is a real Sweet 16 chance. I mean, because I don't love Indiana, Kent State on the other side of that bracket. I think Kent State could beat Indiana. So I think that's wide open for Drake to go through. They go through a banged up Miami team and then they play Indiana or Kent State. I mean, Drake is the most obvious, 12 seed to me that looks like they can get through, and they have the easiest path to do so. Just looking at this bracket as it stands now.
4-1 odds to reach the Sweet 16 for Drake.
4-1. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think if you're going to find a Cinderella, it's probably going to be in your 12 seed with plays of 5. Those 4 games there are, one of them is Duke playing Oral Roberts, being a 12. Charleston's another one, Drake, and the other one is VCU. I think if any of those teams can get to the Sweet 16, they could go on a run and become a Cinderella. They won't win it, but I could see them, one of those 4 12s, making the Elite 8. That's usually where you see that happen. You usually don't, every once in a while. Yeah, St. Peter's did it. That's an anomaly. More times than not, I think history shows that it's a 12 seed that ends up on a run. And I guess because of their, being seeded 12th, they're considered a Cinderella. But I don't know, there's a lot of parity in this tournament this year.
There is. A while ago, Nate, I'm going to get to you in a minute because I'm going to ask you a question here. A while ago, Sheriff Clarke, I texted Nate, I was in Tunica, and I said, hey, give me a pick for college basketball. And it was College of Charleston playing somebody, and he picked the other team. And I was kind of questioning that decision because people love College of Charleston. And he was very adamant that he was right and that he was going to win. And then we both lost. So, Nate, tell me why you hate College of Charleston.
I just think they're over. I mean, they just put up gaudy stats in a terrible conference, right? I mean, I don't think they get out of the first round. There are a lot of people that think that College of Charleston's a sexy pick, but I'm not one of them. I do not love this team. I think that San Diego State's a good team. Maybe that's my West Coast bias. But I just think that San Diego State's for real. And how much? Okay. The thing about these smaller schools like this, like Charleston, that just win because they're just so much more talented than every other team they play in their conference. And they win playing at just a ludicrously fast tempo. And they can sort of cycle in a lot of guys because they just are so much deeper. It's just not a fair measurement when they get up against a team that can slow them down, grind them out. I mean, if San Diego State is pretty content to play a low scoring battle of a game. Virginia would love nothing more if they get through Furman to do the same thing. So that sort of run and gun style of loose offense just doesn't always translate well to the tournament because it just gives because it can just get so unpredictable and it creates more opportunities for a team that's a little bit slower to score. Charleston starts bricking threes, then they can't hang. So they're not a team that I love. They just seem too 3-point reliant. They seem too one-dimensional against, good teams. They can do fine against bad teams, but they don't do as well against good teams, I guess is sort of where I'm at with them.
Okay. Yeah, this tournament is, and it's not unlike a lot of other sports, but it's about matchups. I mean, you can say the same thing in college football. It's about matchups. It's about style of play. Virginia, as Nate mentioned, they want to keep the game in the 40s, for heaven's sakes. Mm-hmm. Last Sunday against Duke at halftime, they had 17 points at the half. And I said at the time, I said, if Duke can hit 60, they'll win this game. And I got to 55, which was enough because Virginia ended up at 47. So that's what I mean when I say you run up against a team you haven't seen before, and you can watch all the film you want. But then when the ball is up in the air and you're playing that style, let's say you're playing a team that likes to make it a track meet. All right. And that's one of your weaknesses. That's where you start to see the 12s beat the 5s and the 4s, or the 13s beat the 4. It's a matchup nightmare for those guys. Or if they're if the other team is long and you're not, the other team shoots 3s and you don't. That's what really hurts. And that's where you see your upsets with style of play. And so that's why I looked at some of these matchups and I look up the style. I don't care what Furman thinks. This game is going to be first to 50 wins.
Yeah, and that's why it's a tricky matchup for Furman too, because they're very much the same sort of run and gun style that Charleston is, which probably doesn't lend itself. I don't know if Virginia covers 5-6 points depending on where you bet it. Furman might cover that number just because Virginia doesn't score very much, but it's a tough matchup for Furman because they're going to have a really hard time running against a Virginia team that plays, amongst the 5 slowest teams in the country. So it's hard to sort of establish your tempo against a team that's so comfortable playing so slowly. And I think that's what Charleston will struggle with too. I think the physicality at San Diego State is just not a thing they're equipped for.
And free throw shooting gets underestimated in this college tournament. You see it at the end when the game is tight. Teams shooting the bonus and missing the front ends of 1-and-1s. Teams that shoot free throws well do well in this tournament. Those that are around the 60, 65%. And sometimes those are some of your most talented teams, like Kentucky. Kentucky annually doesn't make free throws. When the game is on the line at the end and you're up for a 1-and-1 and you can't hit the front end, doesn't bode well for you.
Yeah.
I coached basketball for a number of years at the high school level. And one of the things that we always said when we got into tournament play, there's a couple recipes for success in high school basketball, and this translates to college as well. One of the big ones for us was keep teams at 8 points a quarter. That's not always difficult in high school basketball, a little bit more difficult in college. But if you can keep them to 8 points a quarter, then you got a good chance of winning. The other two are keep it to less than 10 turnovers a game and make your free throws. I've been a part of teams that make deep runs into the state tournament in high school, and almost all of those teams hit their free throws at the right time. The teams that we thought we were good and we got bounced a little bit earlier than we like to. We never really got bounced that early because we were a good basketball program at the school that I teach at, but it's free throws. I mean, it's always free throws. And in college, it's so important. You see this all the time with these teams who, if they can't hit free throws or they go cold at the wrong time, they get bounced early. So you're right, Sheriff Clarke. I mean, you have to be able to hit your free throws and you have to be able to not turn the ball over. These teams that turn the ball over are going to get killed in the first 2 rounds. It's just kind of how it goes. But that's one of the stats to look at. I know I believe Oral Roberts doesn't turn the ball over a lot. So just sort of, if you're looking at some of these Cinderella teams, look for the turnover rates lower. But then, they don't play Duke every day. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like
low
turnover rate, but I mean, you're playing like you're playing an ACC contender.
Guys that are quick, guys that are long, right?
Yeah,
all of a sudden, you think you think that you play well offensively, but like I said, when week in and week out, when you don't face the kind of competition, you don't realize. All of a sudden you get in your game and say, damn, these guys are long. These guys are fast. I did pass. I thought I could make that pass. I made it all season. And, it doesn't work in the tournament.
Mm-hmm. You have to start fast. These teams that are in the 14, 13, 12, they have to have pretty much an incredible first 5 minutes of both halves.
Yes.
If they can do that, they can stay involved. If they can't, they get grinded down too quickly. And then they start to lose their confidence. The better team gains their confidence, and all of a sudden it's kind of a blowout. Nate, I want to talk to you about Kennesaw State. You don't think Kennesaw State's got a chance to make a little run here? I know you were all over them earlier in the year, at least for one game.
We had the one game, and then everyone thinks I'm the Kennesaw State expert. I mean, not really, right? It's that might have been a one-off. I think to sort of further our argument that we were having about things that you need to be able to pull off an upset and be a sort of a Cinderella. I'm not sure that Kennesaw State has that. They're so bad at shooting free throws. I think that's when I think I lost that Kennesaw State game because they couldn't make any free throws. And you know, the stats sort of bear that out. They're 331st in free throw percentage. You know, they played pretty well in the Atlantic Sun final and made some free throws there. But I think overall, they're not a team that's built for like a real deep upset. I mean, you got to be able to knock down some shots, and they just aren't a very good shooting team. They just rely on just sort of speeding the game up to a frenetic pace and hoping that teams panic, and that works in a bad conference. It probably will not work against Xavier.
They're an incredible story because they've just come out of nowhere. And it would be, I think a lot of people's heart says Kennesaw State, but I don't think a lot of people's heads say that. I mean, 14-3 upset, you don't see that a lot. We do see a lot of 2-15s these days, but you get to the 14, 15, 16, really hard to see those upsets go. But, you know, Kennesaw State, they're the Owls. I have a Kennesaw State hat. I grew up very close to that university outside of Atlanta. I have a friend who actually lives out where I live in Mississippi now, who used to be one of the assistant coaches at Kennesaw State. So I'm always sort of rooting for them because of what they built over there. I have a friend who used to coach at Baylor too, so I was kind of like them as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm always picturing Nate as the Kennesaw State guy because he picked him once. But that's what happens. Look, I picked Rutgers once, and you guys won't let me forget it. So
yeah, right. I mean, there are teams that
it wasn't that you picked Rutgers, it's that you were able to break them down. I mean, you had analytics on them that I said nobody goes that deep looking at Rutgers, but you had it all down. You made the case, but I said, come on now.
They covered that game. Are there any other Cinderellas that y'all like?
I mean, I think that mostly my sort of focus has been on teams that I think are vulnerable, and I sort of have it down to a couple just to sort of stay on this 314-ish range. And it's not Kennesaw State that I think is going to pull the upset, but I think there's a real argument that one of these sort of mid-high Big 12 schools is not as good as we think they are. And I think either Baylor or Kansas State could and probably will fall to a mid-major program, just because I'm not totally sold on Baylor. They play no defense. I just can't see how they make a deep run in this tournament. And I'm not sold on K-State. I mean, it's a team that's just been playing together for this season. They basically got cobbled together from transfers and new recruits. They're a great story. They were picked to finish dead last in the Big 12, and here they are as a 3 seed in the tournament. Both those 3 seeds feel like reaches to me. So those are the 2 that I have circled that I'm like, Montana State and the UCSB Gauchos can maybe make some noise there.
That's funny because a lot of people love Kansas State in this tournament. Like a lot of them have Kansas State going far.
I just don't get it. I just don't see it. They just look too one-dimensional. They just fire up tons of threes, and it's like fine, and they play in a Big 12 conference that cannibalizes itself or tends to, I mean, the Big 12 is just so inconsistent. Like we were talking about Kansas earlier, they have some of the best wins in the country. If you just look at win resume, they're unbelievable. They also have 7 losses that you're kind of like, man, really? And it seems like that with every Big 12 team.
I think one of the reasons people like them is their path to the Sweet 16, if they're able to get past Kentucky, assuming Kentucky beats Providence, is pretty light. Not everybody's a Marquette believer. A lot of people share that Big East skepticism that Sheriff Clark's talking about. I don't know though. Hey, Montana State. Look, I got friends everywhere. I had a friend who went to Montana State. I've been to Bozeman a lot. It's a great place, really incredible basketball being played up there. So you just never know. You never know there.
I still maintain though, with college basketball, coaching matters. College basketball is really about coaching and guard play, but coaching matters. And so when I look at that, one game I'm really interested in seeing, and I hope it turns out that way, in round 2, Michigan State and Marquette. That's going to tell me a lot about Marquette. Tom Izzo, I don't buy into this, March is Izzo time stuff, but he still has a solid club. They play hard. They never give up, and they don't stop playing. And again, if this comes down to the last couple of minutes, coaching really stands out. And I'd really like to see, and I'm not a Michigan State fan. I mean, as a Duke fan, we don't like Michigan State. We're tired of seeing them in the tournament. But I'm kind of, and this is a pick with my heart. I'd love to see Michigan State. Well, first of all, I got to get by USC, but then I'd like to see them beat Marquette. And that's really the only Big Ten team that I have any use for is Michigan State.
I mean, Marquette just seems tough to me. I mean, let's not forget that Shaka Smart has had some pretty deep runs in this tournament because he plays a style of basketball that works really well in these one and done situations. So, I mean, Marquette to me doesn't look like a walkover like it does to you. I mean, this guy's experience in the tournament settings, he had a few really deep runs with VCU, had kind of a tough send at Texas.
Cinderella.
Yeah.
He was a Cinderella.
Big time.
But the thing is, and I haven't taken a look at that deeply at Marquette. It's in downtown Milwaukee. Like I said, I was a Al McGuire Marquette fan. I was, born and raised in Milwaukee. I was a Buzz Williams Marquette fan. Is Shaka Smart playing with Wojciechowski's players though? He's only been there 2 years.
That's a good question. He might be.
He might be a better coach than Wojo, but it's I don't know. I'm just asking the question about, is he playing with Wojo's players? Because he hasn't had time really to get a couple recruiting. His recruits right now would be freshmen.
Yeah, I mean, but if he is playing with Wojo's players, he's taught him how to play his sort of style of basketball, which isn't super easy to sort of adapt to. So I mean, credit to him if he's making somebody else's players work.
That's true.
I might just rename this podcast Sheriff Clarke Dumps on the Big East. Nate dumps on the ACC. We just, every ACC team Nate wants to fade, and every time the Big East comes up, Sheriff Clarke's just completely dismissive. And earlier you said you kind of like Marquette, but then we got closer to the end of the hour and you're back on the whole Shaka Smart is old a one-trick pony. Yeah. Which I know you.
I'm not a fan of Smart because he went to Texas where you get all the resources you need and he did nothing.
That happens to every coach at Texas in any sport ever.
That's also
it's a poisonous program. It's not Shaka's fault.
We might find out different this year.
Basketball is hard. Ole Miss just hired Chris Beard, and I saw a quote. Yeah. And I saw a quote, and he's like, I don't want to make the tournament. I want to win the tournament. And I suppose he's talking about the real tournament, not the NIT. As an Ole Miss fan, I would be happy to make the tournament. I don't think we have to win. I think if we just made the tournament, it would be fun.
You guys are used to losing. Losing becomes a habit.
Yeah, I mean, and every once in a while they make the tournament, and you get the most fun you've ever had on a Thursday, and then they lose, or unless they won a couple. They had Marshall Henderson like 10 years ago, and they got to like
that. Yeah, I remember those years.
But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, so it's college basketball is hard. I would hate to be a college basketball coach because you have success, then you go somewhere else and you get creamed, and it's such a weird sport in ways that football you can really build a dynasty in a program, and there's only a couple teams that are actually going to win. But college basketball is so difficult. So one of the things we need to do before we get on to our next segment, which I promise won't take too long because we're running a little long today, but we're all excited about college basketball. We need to thank Ignite 45, one of our sponsors today. If you're a small business owner struggling to generate leads and revenue, then this message is for you. In today's economy, a winning digital strategy is a must. Without it, your business could fall behind and lose out. Many business owners struggle with outdated websites and no real presence on Google when people are searching for their services. But do not be discouraged because Ignite 45 can fix that. They design great websites that turn visitors into paying customers and create SEO strategies that rank your business on top of search results. Ignite 45 is also the first digital agency dedicated to helping your business reach millions on your social media platform or of your choice. If you are ready to see real results and work with a digital partner that shares your values, then give them a call today at 720-740-1776. That's 720-740-1776, or visit www.ignite45.com/Godzilla. Use promo code Godzilla to save $100 on your digital needs today. We want to thank Ignacio for partnering with us at Ignite 45. Okay, I've got one more segment for us today, and we've talked a little bit about this already. Now, this segment's called Teams Who Got Robbed. What I kind of mean by that are teams that got snubbed from the tournament that you thought should have made it, or teams like Duke who maybe should have been a higher seed. Anything like that, you can take this discussion any way you want. We talked about the Duke thing. My big one was Rutgers, and then they lost in the NIT in the first round. So now I can't complain that they got snubbed because they can't even make it to the second round in the NIT tournament. But let's start with Nate. If you've got maybe a team you think got screwed in the selection or in the seeding.
I mean, I don't know. I can't say that there's a team that I think just got like totally hosed. I mean, if there was a team that, you know, in the selection, I mean, Rutgers seemed like they probably should have gotten in over, you know, some other teams. Probably should have gotten in over Nevada at the very least. Nevada plays tonight. Go Wolfpack. We watching that game. But in terms of like just seeding, I mean, there are some eyebrow raisers for sure. I mean, I thought that UConn played better than to be a 4 seed. I thought that, you know, their performance 25-8 in the Big East, you know, solid metrics across the board. I thought they were better than a 4 seed. I think Tennessee's better than a 4 seed, to be quite honest with you. I think that they got underseeded a little bit. I think they're, you know, a stronger team than like, you know, if I'm looking at it, Marquette, I know I've been banging the drum on Marquette, but I think Tennessee's a better team than Marquette is. So there's some eyebrow raisers like that sort of in the mid region. You start to get these 8-9 ones and it's just strange. I mean, West Virginia is 19-14, but their metrics are awesome. They got a 9 seed. It feels like they could have easily been a 7. You know,
yeah, but you can't quit West
8,
Virginia. You've been talking about them for years. I mean, it doesn't matter. West Virginia can be the worst team in the history of basketball, and you'll be like, I don't know, they should at least got the playoff game or the play-in game. So you're just, I mean, you can't quit West Virginia.
Yeah, but like 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds, it's all sort of nitpicking. I mean, they're all going to end up in the same place soon enough, anyways. Which is playing a really, really good team. So I don't even know if you can complain that much about some of those seedings. To be quite honest. So Indiana seemed high. A 4 seed for Indiana seems high. I mean, I know they had a pretty good run in the Big Ten tournament that sort of boosted them in the eyes of the committee, but a pretty mediocre year overall. Those are sort of ones that jump out to me. I don't know if Sheriff Clarke has some sort of that raised his eyebrows other than, you know, Duke, who plays a frisky Oral Roberts team and then, you know, eventually would be on a path to play the clear worst number 1 seed in the tournament and the clear worst number 2 seed after they got hosed in their brackets.
Yeah, I think it's like I said earlier, it's more about not where you're seated, but where you have to play, how far you have to travel, that sort of thing. But there's one team that I thought should have been given more consideration. But I'm one of those that said, if you didn't make the tournament, don't come whining to me. You have all the opportunity in the world to make this tournament. And if you're going to leave it in the hands of a committee, shame on you. Go out there, win. And if you don't win the regular season conference or the conference championship, the conference tournament, you can't be ranked or seated higher than somebody in your conference who did. So, you know, some of the teams that you mentioned, Nate, those teams didn't win the regular season and they didn't win the conference tournament, which is why 100%. You can look at Kentucky and say that. And Kentucky 3 weeks ago was a bubble team. How are they at number 6 and Duke's at number 5? You know, but for the fact that, you know, I mean, they Duke won the conference tournament and gets the automatic bid. But I think Fordham should have gotten more consideration. I really do. Solid season, came out of nowhere. Long history with that program. I remember watching them when Charlie Elverton was playing. They played Marquette. They were both independents at the time. That's back during the Al McGuire days. Fordham easily could have been given a bid. They weren't, but I don't shed any tears really for anybody that doesn't make this tournament.
Sure.
I was shedding a little tear for my cross-state rival Mississippi State as the first 4 play-in. Then they lost to Pittsburgh last night. So I'm back to laughing at Mississippi State.
ACC.
Yeah, that's right. There we go.
Yeah. There we go.
A couple of those other games are interesting. Like Nate said, Nevada, Arizona State. He's a Wolfpack fan. Both of us have degrees from Nevada. Fairleigh Dickinson plays Texas Southern tonight. That's where my dad went to school. So maybe he'll be watching Fairleigh Dickinson try to get in the tournament. They always have a pretty good basketball program.
Yeah, that
we
game
didn't talk
tips off in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't talk about Arkansas at all. Eric Musselman down there. They're an 8 seed. They play Illinois. Then they'd have Kansas. I kind of thought they were a lower seed. They play everyone tough. So, their record isn't great. I'm glad they're in the tournament. They should have been in. But I don't know. I think Arkansas could have easily been a 7 or 6 seed, but that's kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah. I can't. Yeah. And I can't love this Arkansas team after Musselman abandoned us at Nevada. Just right after an Elite 8 berth, we were all feeling good about the program and I'm never going to leave. I love it here. And then he goes to Arkansas. So yeah, I'm done with, I got off the Muss bus then, I'm done with that guy.
Yeah, well, look, welcome to my life. Every Ole Miss football coach has been telling me that since 2000, since Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tuberville, told everyone he was going to leave Oxford in a pine box, and then he left like a week later for Auburn. All these guys, Lane Kiffin is going to do the same thing. So,
bury me at Hemingway Vaught.
Yeah, right. Vaught Hemingway. Thank you very much.
Hemingway, sorry.
Yeah, right. They all leave. They either get fired or they leave. And we fired Ed Orgeron and then he won a national championship. So it's like ridiculous. But yeah, so this round 1 starts tomorrow. Should be a really incredible tournament. There's so much parity. I agree with y'all. I don't think that we're going to have a 4 number 1 seeds. There's just too much parity. And I think we're going to see, as we always do, some really incredible upsets. Sheriff Clarke will be cheering hard for Duke. Nate will be cheering hard for all his Big East teams. And I will be cheering hard for Purdue to lose so I can look smart. So should be fun. Should be a lot of fun.
Gonna be a great
the best 2 days of the tournament are the first Thursday and Friday, because you have all the teams playing. You got so many games on at one time. You got True TV. You got to go to TNT, TBS. You got to figure out which game is played on which channel. You can switch back and forth. And then they, of course, on the trailer, along the bottom or the top right, they'll show some of the scores of the other teams, and they'll be rolling that. To me, that's exciting. Is the first 2 days.
Absolutely agree. I usually take both days off work because it's just like a national holiday for me.
Yeah, it really is for you. I've seen you fall apart by about 4 p.m.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't usually make it to those later games. Good thing you're out west. You can catch those games pretty early.
If I do make it, I'm like looking up the recaps the next day because lose a little time sometimes.
Yeah. Memory gets foggy in the bars there.
They all bleed together.
Yeah. All of a sudden you wake up on Sunday and check your account. So good luck with that, Nate. All right. So thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the Godzilla Wins Picks Show. You can download and listen to Godzilla Wins Picks Show every Saturday on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please be sure to download, rate, and review if you like the show. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and drop a comment with your picks for March Madness. We want to see them. We'll see you Saturday for round 2 of the tournament with our regular panel. Everybody, good luck on round 1.